Welcome back in Chocozone podcast. In the world of bean-to-bar artisan, there are producers that has given the way to a lot of other chocolate makers. One of these, for sure, is Dandelion Chocolate, that has given some important point to this moment. The possibility to create the chocolate only with two ingredients that keep the origin flavor like the main concept of the chocolate. The possibility to share with the other chocolate makers their experiences and show the customers and the consumers their production while they are making. So, a new age for chocolate movement that from San Francisco has arrived to Tokyo and has given a target for a lot of other chocolate makers that has followed their way, thanks also looking the system that Dandelion Chocolate has created. We are very happy to have here with us Todd Masonis in our podcast. But now it is time to start myself and start with this episode. Enjoy! Hello guys, welcome back to our podcast. This time in Chocozone we have, I think that you could, have you just seen a lot of times this kind of chocolate bar, and we are with the founder of Dandelion Chocolate, and here we are with Todd Masonis. Hello Todd, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure.
Good, thank you.
It's a great pleasure to have you here. Normally we ask to our guests to introduce themselves, and so also if you are quite famous in the world of chocolate, we have to do the same. So please tell us something about you.
For sure. So a Dandelion is a small batch chocolate maker based in San Francisco. So originally, my history was in the tech world. I had a startup years ago that we had sold, and then I had started with some friends to make chocolate as a hobby in a garage. And at the time, we were just seeing if it was possible to make chocolate. We didn't have a business plan. We didn't look at the market opportunity. We were just sort of seeing what flavors we could get. And we were experimenting by buying beans and sharing tips and tricks online. And before we knew it, we were very surprised with the chocolate we were making and how it tasted so different than what we had been used to. And then we discovered we were part of this new global movement, this craft chocolate movement. And so we just kind of were in the right place at the right time. And then we decided to go a little deeper with it. So we started to build out a little chocolate factory and cafe in San Francisco, and then built out more locations and just have been building ever since.
And which was the first origin that you made the chocolate from?
So this is funny. When we were starting, we had no idea what we were doing, and we had a random set of beans from Panama and the Dominican Republic, and we just mixed a random amount together and made a bar. And at the time, it turned out really, really well. And we were like, oh, this is so easy. Anything. Very, very lucky. With that first batch, just happened to be really good, because later we tried many batches and learned what was good and bad. But yeah, the first batch we ever did was Panama Dominican Republic blend. Complete accident, but it turned out well.
So one of the most complicated things to do, to blend the different origins, you study with that.
So we were just, like I said, this was not a master plan. We just grabbed some beans, we threw them in, we got our hair dryer, we got our PVC pipes, we built some machines. It was just for fun.
And how many different origins do you have now?
So right now, I think we have over 10. It kind of changes because some come into stock and some come out of stock. But we tend to work mostly with Central and South America. We have beans from the Dominican Republic. We have a limited set. I think the bar you showed was Venezuela. We don't have a lot of Venezuelan beans anymore. Costa Rica, Guatemala. We do have beans from Africa, like Sierra Leone. We have Madagascar. So we kind of try lots of different flavors and origins, and just try to discover new and interesting flavors.
About Sierra Leone, I read. I think that you I don't know. You get in contact with the farmers from Angola rainforest, And then I read some articles, some news about it. Can you tell us the story? Because I think that the chocolate makers, one of the most peculiar gifts they can make to customer, to the consumer, is to make them in touch with the story of the farmers and the situation in poor countries. Or can you tell us something about it? The story.
For sure, I can tell you a bit. And mostly Greg does the bulk of our sourcing, so he's the true expert on that. But I'll do my best. So we actually, I believe that relationship started with Dr. Christy Leslie, who's the sort of the doc of Choc, and she arranged this introduction, got us excited about these beans. We receive a lot of samples of beans in general. People will send us them, and we try them, and sometimes they're good and sometimes they're bad. And I believe with this one, we tried them and we're like, wow, this is really, really, really good. I think it had just a super chocolatey flavor. So we worked with the beans. Greg, I believe Greg went out to visit. And the thing that's really interesting is, Christy Leslie did a blog post on this where she sent all the photos back of the farmers looking at our bar of chocolate with the label, with their name on it, with the country, and people clapping. And it was just so, I don't know, I think like for a lot of farmers and a lot of beans, it is sort of commodity. You don't really get to see your name out there. And it was just really, I don't know, it was just really touching to see them take pride in seeing their sort of, their product, being shown around the world. And she showed photos of like our factory. And so, yeah, it was pretty amazing to see it go all the way around the world.
Yeah.
Again, about the farmers, how did you work with them? Do you drive the system of fermentation? Do you follow them, or do you leave and trust on their job?
For sure. So it definitely has evolved over time. So early on, I remember a long time ago going to vacation in Costa Rica, bringing back some beans. I was very excited. We roasted them up and they weren't very good at all. And we realized that just sort of choosing random beans would not work. And, we're looking for something very, very special. And so then around, I guess it was 2011. Yeah, around 2011, Greg joined the company and he took that on as his main project. So he, in a non-pandemic time is traveling the world, meeting with farms, meeting with farmers. And we really tried to figure out sort of who's who and who has good beans and who is aligned with us in terms of values. And so generally the process has been started by getting samples. We always want to try the beans and see, do they have interesting flavors. Sometimes we might have beans that taste good, but they're very similar to other beans that we have. And we're kind of looking for a more unique flavor, unique story. So there's a lot of questions that go into which beans we choose. But once we kind of are interested or intrigued by a bean, that's usually the point in time where Greg or someone else from the company visits the farm and tries to understand what their process is, what their unique take on it is, and try to form a deeper relationship. At that point, we don't generally get super involved with the fermentation. Generally, what we do is we can connect the farmers to people like Dan O'Doherty, who do a really great job of helping them figure out what we and others might like and get their processes in a good spot. And then at that point, we form a deeper relationship. We get the beans, and then when the beans get to us, we spend many months trying to figure out how we want to roast them and process them. So it really is kind of a true partnership all the way from the tree all the way up to us.
You told us that you found yourself in this global movement that is the Bean to Bar movement. Did you see any particular change or how the movement evolved over the years? How developed? Is any particular? I remember at the very beginning there was this kind of strong will of share any peculiarity, any details of the process. Do you think it's still like that, or there is something that, because of many different reasons, had changed?
I think that's a good question. I think it has changed. I mean, obviously, I think it's changed in scale, in size. I think when we started, there was only a handful of small makers in the United States. Now there's at least a couple hundred. I think it's grown internationally. I know we have some spots in Japan. When we first came to Japan, there were very few bean to bar makers. It's also sort of exploding. And so I think one thing that's happened with just so much more size and diversity is there are many people trying lots of different unique takes on it. So I think early on, a lot of people like us were very focused on the origin or very deep in sharing the process and how it worked. And I think a lot of their audience was other chocolate makers that get very excited about the percentages and the machinery. I think now we've seen a lot more interest in things like raw or unroasted chocolate. I think people are very interested in many different types of inclusions. There's been some people who've done whole bean chocolate where they have the husk still intact. There's all sorts of sort of interesting and creative things happening right now, pretty different than Dandelion. So I think it's just been a very large increase in the diversity and types of things that people are trying.
And the competition? Is still some sort of bad feeling about competition, or still everything is smooth and...
Yeah, I'd say for us, we don't really view ourselves as super competitive with our friends in the bean to bar market. We sort of view craft chocolate as kind of disrupting a much larger industrial system. And so for us, if someone learns about Dandelion and likes the type of chocolate that we make, they might then try 5 other small makers and find one that they like and one that they don't like, and vice versa. People have come to us after they've met a small maker in their town and then found out about Dandelion and tried what we do. And so it's not so much that we are fighting with the other small makers for customers. I think we're really trying to change people's tastes and get them off of your normal sort of supermarket commodity industrial chocolate into something a bit more premium.
Yeah, before this pandemic, Dandelion moved in the new factory that is really big, amazing, and you share everything with the with the customers. Tell us which usual problems in the chocolate maker could find when they needed to scale up. So you have just done suggested to the people that want to follow your street.
For sure. Well, so I think so obviously there's the pandemic itself, which was very challenging, and I'm happy to talk about it as well. But I'd say in general, in terms of scaling, I think that one of the big challenges that small makers will run into is really about having good unit economics. In order for the business to work, there has to be enough margins so that there can be some profits, you can continue to grow. I think when the companies are very small, you sort of get a lot of benefit by having a lot of sort of your fixed costs, like your management, your owners, sort of very involved in those steps. But if you want to scale up, you kind of have to find this balance of, can you make chocolate efficiently? But I think if your only goal is to increase efficiency and decrease cost, that's at odds with having great chocolate. And so for us, it was very important when we built our new factory to do 3 things. We wanted the ability to make more chocolate because we were always sort of sold out and we could never meet the demand. We wanted to make our chocolate more efficiently, so there was more margin and more room for experimenting with beans, but also with more efficient machinery comes the ability to sort of automate some of the parts of the process that don't really affect flavor, but are a lot of labor and aren't huge, aren't parts of the process that our employees really enjoy. And then I think the third one is to make better chocolate. I mean, we honestly didn't want to just scale up and then have our chocolate be worse. Like if we did that, we wouldn't have accomplished anything. So we worked really hard to try to experiment with different types of machines, some that are very old, some that are very new, to see what works. And what works for us doesn't work for everyone. And we have our unique style and what we try to do at our own point of view. And so it's kind of been a lot of just testing and learning until we found something that works. And I think we've pretty much gotten there. We can make quite a bit more chocolate now, and we're still trying to scale it up. Our economics are a lot better, and I think we're making some of the best chocolate we've ever made. So I'm really happy with how that's turned out so far.
And another challenge that you faced that a few years ago, you decided to open a shop in Japan. So it's a completely different country, okay, probably a different taste, okay, so why did you decide to go there, and which were the challenges that you have to face? Did you have to change something about your product to meet their taste and the requirements over there?
Yeah, for sure. So, again, I would sort of say it's not like we had a big master plan. We didn't like pull up a world map and say, we're going to Japan next. I think our strategy has always been, we're just sort of open to opportunities, and we're always trying to grow and learn and see what works. And so we had an opportunity to work with a really good partner, a person named Seiji, who was very successful in bringing sort of the Japanese culture to America and vice versa. He had done a little bit of work with Blue Bottle, and he lived in San Francisco, and he would come to visit, and he kept saying, this would be so great in Japan. Japan needs this. We should open in Tokyo. And we kind of said, oh, I don't know, like that that sounds like a lot of work, and we don't know much about Japan. And but we started to realize we were part of this global movement, and the sort of joke we would say is like we would actually get a lot of visitors from Japan.
Yeah, you had the endless queue outside of the shop. It was crazy.
Well, that's when we opened, but I would say even before that, we would get visitors to our shop in the US, and they say that they would want to become the Dandelion of Japan. And we said, well, you know what? Let's just do this. Let's try it. And so I think we were a little small to open in a whole new country, and we learned a lot. But yeah, I mean, the first day we opened, there was a line outside the block or around the block. I think that the community in Japan has really gotten excited about craft and about really trying to understand the right flavors and nuances. And I think we've been really fascinated by the cross-pollination of having a team in another country who is thinking so deeply and thoughtfully about how to make some of the world's best chocolate that things that we do in the US influences Japan and vice versa. We roast the same beans. We sometimes do exchange programs. Our employees go to both locations. And I think that really makes the chocolate better.
So it's not just a matter of shop over there. You have a factory over there.
Yeah, we have a small factory. It's similar to our original factory in San Francisco on Valencia Street, which is a very small scale factory, not that different from kind of where we were in the garage, sort of the original, almost like an R&D lab now, we'd say. And the chocolate makers in Japan, our team is using the same beans, the same machines, the same process, the same philosophy. But what's really interesting is that even when we roast the same beans with the same team, same philosophy, same everything, the Japan version is pretty different than the US version because the different teams are taste testing for their sort of local preferences. And so one thing that's really fun to do is to get a dandelion bar from Japan and get the same one from the US and then try it, because normally we say, look at the difference in flavor based on origin. This is sort of the next level. Look at the difference in flavor only based on the unique local differences in two setups that are almost exactly the same.
So that's where the chocolate maker does make a huge difference.
Yeah, and I think the chocolate makers are tasting, and I think that everyone's tastes are a little bit different, and it's influenced by memories and other things that they've tasted. And when I've been to Japan and I've chatted with the chocolate makers and tried some of their samples, and the flavors that they pick up and think about are not flavors that were part of my childhood, and vice versa. And so it makes sense that there would be a different palate. And again, I think that's just shows how interesting and deep and complex the world of chocolate can be.
Yeah. And have you never thought about a new factory in Europe, for example, or not?
I would love that. I mean, I would love someday to have little dandelions sort of expand over the world. I think we've learned it's very challenging to run a larger organization with a small team. And certainly the pandemic. I mean, the pandemic almost killed us, and that's so we want to make sure that we're in a good spot. But yeah, we'd love to be in more places. We especially even just in the U.S., we'd love to be in New York. We'd love to sort of make the hop over maybe to London or Europe. Like that's definitely the dream someday. But sort of first things first, and we want to make sure that we continue to make great chocolate and kind of do everything we set out to do already.
Talking about Europe. Our taste as consumers is a little different. We are used to chocolate with extra cocoa butter addition normally, okay, and a lot of sugar, okay. When the Bean to Bar chocolate movement was born, there was kind of change about it because the new chocolate makers were focused more on the origin, on the beans. They were not so interested in sugar, so extra cocoa butter, it was what we call now the two ingredient chocolate. Can you tell us the difference according to you if the extra additional cocoa butter is something that you want to do, don't want to do, if you want to keep some sort of, can we say that is some sort of philosophy, some sort of approach to that food that is chocolate that is different from the European average standard?
Sure. Yeah, and I think the important thing in my mind is I don't think there's a right way or a wrong way. And the chocolate that we make at Dandelion is really just our point of view, our preferences, the way we like to do it. And, when we started early on, I personally was not as big of a fan of a very sort of super cocoa buttery bar. But the other thing that I felt was it is sometimes difficult to really pick out the differences in origin. The more sugar there is, the more cocoa butter, the more there's going on. And so by kind of starting with a bit more of a minimalist approach, where we just said, what is the absolute minimum? And then how do we add to it? That sort of landed on 2-ingredient chocolate. I think Dandelion, like long term, I think it would be fun to make a Euro bar. I think it'd be a fun, like exciting exercise, a limited edition. It'd be like a really interesting project to work on. I think in that case, we'd probably want to press our own cocoa butter, and we'd really want to do it right. But yeah, I think there's all different styles and approaches. And I mean, I think in many ways, Dandelion really was influenced a lot by Europe because I'd spent a bunch of time just traveling around, especially to in France, but also Italy. And, every cafe I'd go to, even at the train stations where you're kind of like just the standing bars had excellent hot chocolates. In America, the most we could find is a Hershey syrup kind of squirted into mostly just milk. And so when we opened Dandelion in the US, we really wanted to make sure not only were we a chocolate factory where you could see chocolate being made, but you could also experience chocolate in the way that most of the world was already having the ability to experience and just was lacking here. So I think there's a lot of interplay between the different continents. But again, this is just our unique point of view, and there are lots of different point of views out there that are very successful and very interesting, and we enjoy eating. It's just, everyone's got to choose kind of where they're going to focus their own effort.
Yeah, there is a chocolate maker from Venezuela that he moved to Paris. I remember when he just started at the very beginning, he used to make his 2-ingredient chocolate because he was used to it. Because in Venezuela, they have the cocoa, so they are used to it. And after a few months, he told me I had to add cocoa butter. In no way that the French palate, the French taste can appreciate completely 100% my 2-ingredient chocolate. So I had to add it. No way. And that's the other point. I mean, if you cannot sell your chocolate, I mean, it's useless. You cannot go on just by eating your chocolate, the chocolate that you like and you produce for yourself.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting problem to think through because, on the one hand, if you're ruled entirely by market forces, you probably end up in a situation probably pretty similar to industrial chocolate where it becomes very sweet. There's no care or concern for the bean or the labor practices. The packaging is all going to optimize a certain way because that's probably what is successful in the market and sort of matches that sort of curve. I think on the other hand, there's the it's our point of view. There's no compromise. Who cares if no one buys our chocolate? Like, we're going to make 1 bar a year and that's what it is in perfection. And I think we try to be kind of maybe in the middle or kind of more slightly towards the perfection part. But it is kind of this interesting back and forth between what can sell and what is your point of view, and can you, and where do you find it? And I think I've always sort of believed that it's really more a question of short term versus long term. I think there's all the short term optimization around meeting the market. But I think I sort of believe that if we take a longer term view and we just keep doing what we think is right and have a good point of view, that eventually maybe the rest of the market will sort of change, and then there'll be a pretty good opportunity there. So we just have to be very patient.
Yeah, with the cocoa butter, the industry add also other things. No, sometimes we don't know exactly what they add, but there are some numbers, some letters behind, and the chocolate artisan don't do it. Tell us your point of view about the differences between the artisan like Dandelion and a lot of other friends that we know, and the big companies. That the difference are in the products, in the marketing, in the relation with supplier, in the relation with customers, in the ingredients that they add inside. Tell us your point of view, please.
For sure. I don't think that industrial chocolate is on the face, evil or bad or anything. I don't want to give that impression.
Sure.
I think that just different companies and different industries have different point of views, and they have different values. And I think that the sort of industrial chocolate movement has been focused around how do we make something that's consistent and very low cost. And I do think it's a miracle of industrialization that you can open a Hershey's bar and it tastes the same no matter where you go. And I think it's pretty interesting how they've been able to make chocolate in this way that tastes a certain way that people like, and they did that with with really good economics. I think they hit their goal. They made their goal, and so in that sense, I think they're successful. But I think there are different ways to be successful, and I think that's something that got lost in the process is that chocolate can have these interesting flavors and all these interesting nuances and different tastes and different flavor notes, different genetics, and I think that sort of diversity and interest in and that all that diversity is really interesting, and we want to be part of the movement that help brings that back. And I've been very interested to learn a lot more about what happened in the world of coffee. I remember when Starbucks showed up at my town, and that was mind blowing when I was growing up about what is this coffee thing, and it's so expensive, and now Starbucks, there's so many more much sort of deeper, fancier coffees out there. We've talked to some people who were involved in the craft beer industry that went through this. If you look at their charts, around 1995, it went from no craft beer to it exploded. And so I think chocolate is just the next one on the list. I just don't know if it's going to happen tomorrow or in 30 years. But I think the world of chocolate is going to be pretty different. And I think the sort of industrial chocolate, to be a chocolate bar in America, I think the number is 10% bean is what you need to be considered chocolate. And so, that's, I would say that there's not even chocolate in that chocolate. We're trying to do something a little bit different. So I don't know. I think it's actually really exciting.
Yeah, I think the main point is consistency. I mean, the big companies, they want to make a lot of chocolate. They had to make a lot of chocolate because of their costs and whatever. So the small child and the adults, they have to like their chocolate, and the chocolate must be always the same. So that's a big difference.
For sure. Yeah, it's just their goals. Yeah.
So we are quite finished our interview, and the last question we do to everybody is, how do you see the bean to bar movement in within 10 years, and how do you see also Dandelion, maybe also in Europe?
I hope so. I don't know. I've said this before. I think this is the most exciting time for chocolate in the last 100 years. I think when I look at all of the big players in the chocolate world, I think the youngest one, Valrhona, I think is around 99 years old. So these are companies that have been around for centuries, literal centuries. And, having been sort of in Silicon Valley where, if you're around for 10 years, that's ancient, it's just interesting to see that time scale. And so I do think the world of chocolate is going to change. I think that craft chocolate is going to have a big effect on industrial chocolate. I think it's not going to be interesting until all of a sudden it's disrupted, and then it is very interesting. And I think that in the industry, people have asked the question, like, is this more like coffee? Is this more like wine? Or is this more like beer? So, I think the coffee, the people who think it's like coffee would say every corner, every city is going to have a chocolate roaster. And just how they used to have coffee houses and chocolate houses, Starbucks brought back the coffee house. There'll be chocolate houses everywhere. And I think that's a possibility. I think there are people who think it's going to be more like beer, where you go into your supermarket and there's the candy aisle and then there's the craft chocolate aisle. And that's already started to happen. I know of many supermarkets that have the $20 expensive craft bar.
In Seattle, I saw a supermarket in Seattle. It was impressive because of the numbers of craft chocolate.
Oh, yeah. And there are some stores that have like a cheesemonger and they have a chocolate monger, and they help you understand the nuances and the difference. And I think that's a really interesting angle. And then I think there's the wine angle. I know Toak has put a stake in the ground with the sort of $300 chocolate bar and saying like, hey, like this has a value. And, anywhere else in any other industry, if you wanted to buy the best of that in the world, you'd be paying more than $10. And so chocolate's got a big ceiling there. So I don't know if it's going to be coffee or beer or wine or something completely different. But it's going to be pretty exciting. And I think in terms of Dandelion, we'd love to continue to grow. We'd like to have more places to introduce people to craft chocolate. We'd also like to help grow the market and get other people excited about it. I think we'd love to be in other cities, but we also want to be really thoughtful. Again, if all we do is become industrial chocolate, and that we haven't accomplished anything, we want to make sure that we stay true to our values as we continue to grow.
Okay, right. Okay, thank you, Todd.
Thank you, Todd. We hope to to be sooner or later to be able to meet again, to find somewhere in the world and shake our hands again. We hope
And you
so.
can come also in Europe and Italy to visit us and to take some chocolate with cocoa butter.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, I'm like I said, most of the team is vaccinated now. I'm getting my second shot on Thursday, so like it's happening. It's ending fast, at least here. So I hope soon, later this year.
Thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
your time.
All right,
Take
sounds
care.
good.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.